Joining us now with the latest on trade talks, the future of TikTok and more, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Mr. Secretary, it's good to have you on. Even I can figure out where you are from that backdrop.
Joe, good to see you. Good to be here in London.
And it's good to have you on. So I think you got, obviously, you have an earpiece in, so you heard what was in our headlines. Let's just go in order and talk about some of the things with Steve Myron that we talked about. And 48-47, isn't it beautiful? I don't know. And we even, I think Republicans couldn't even get all their members to vote. So it's very highly partisan. But is it an odd structure to have him stay in the administration, even if it's with a leave of absence? But he's only going to be there, I guess, 4 months. What's your comments on how that has been set up?
Yeah, Joe, I don't think there's anything irregular about it at all. I mean, what's the difference between taking a leave of absence, leaving his job open, and then having him to go through confirmation again? So I think just that the kind of kabuki was dispensed with, and everyone knows that he's going back to CEA. So I think cards on the table is actually much more transparent.
So he'd have to get confirmed again to go back to CEA? We were wondering about that.
Well, if he didn't take the leave of absence, if he stepped down, the job would have remained open, and then he would have had to be reconfirmed whenever he leaves, January, February.
Then. Yeah,
So I think the signaling value here is that the plan is for him to come back to CEA. This is interim. It was caused by Governor Kugler's unexpected early departure.
If he were to stay and have his term extended in some way, shape, or form, I would assume at that point the CEA job would no longer be one that was on hold for him, that would be opened up.
Of course not, Becky. Of course, it wouldn't be held, but the plan right now is for Stephen to come back.
We also mentioned your latest thing that you're spearheading, among many other things, Mr. Secretary, and that is a search for a replacement for Chair Powell. James Bullard, we have spoken positively about him because he's been a friend of the show over the years, always thoughtful and always open and transparent about everything he was thinking. We did point out some of the things he said. He seemed to be stressing Fed independence and the ability to raise rates if necessary, to defend the dollar, or a lot of things maybe that a president that really wants lower interest rates might not like to hear. Was any of that disqualifying in your view?
None of that's disqualifying in my view. Of course, the Fed does not have a dollar mandate. The Fed has an employment mandate. It has a growth mandate. And the dollar is a byproduct of that. And Mr. Bullard and I had a very good, approximately 2-hour session. He has incredible experience from the St. Louis Fed. He is an expert on monetary policy, deep academic background, and knows the institution of the Fed very well.
There are some that think that the only thing the Fed really should be focused on, it's a dual mandate, but it's inflation and the value of the dollar. You just kind of indicated that their primary mandate, in your view, is full employment and maximum growth for the economy?
No, I said it's inflation and growth and the calculus between those two.
Okay. I guess going back to Fed independence, and I understand that I don't know of a single president that hasn't argued for lower rates, but under President Trump, do you think Volcker could have done what he did back in that period of hyperinflation that we had, Mr. Secretary? I think that's what people worry about. When there's times you need to take some medicine, maybe even cause a recession to do what's right long term for inflation. Would that be difficult under President Trump, in your view?
Joe, as you know, President Trump's very sophisticated economically, and I think he has been right at almost every turn, whether it's his first term, his second term. And if he thought inflation were the problem for the American people, sure, he'd be willing to have rate hikes. But right now, the problem has been that the Fed has been behind the curve. We're hoping they will start catching up in a rather fulsome way. As your previous guest said, 25 basis point cut is priced in tomorrow, and we will see whether the Fed wants to go to neutral or become accommodative.
The president thinks neutral is like 300 basis points from where we are right now. Do you agree with him on that calculation?
I don't think he thinks that's neutral. I think he thinks that's accommodative, and I think he thinks the Fed is behind the curve. We are in the middle of a housing crisis, and this affordability crisis, President Trump didn't get us here. It happened during the Biden administration, and the first thing that President Trump has done is bring down inflation. For the past 6 months, inflation has been below the Fed's target. So we had to bend the curve down, and now we're going to start working on affordability. And one of the keys to housing affordability is lower rates.
Mr. Secretary, the Fed controls the short end, not the long end. If something happens that the long end goes up, even after the Fed cuts rates, that will mean that mortgage rates won't come down either, because the 10-year mortgage rate is going to be what 30-year mortgage rates are. The 10-year is what 30-year mortgage rates are tied to. What do you do in that scenario?
Well, Becky, first of all, what you're describing is what happened last year at this time when the Fed did the 50 basis point jumbo rate cut in front of the election, and the long end kind of rebelled a bit. Right now, the front end, the very front end of the curve is inverted. I think that the market is pricing in 75 basis points between now and the end of the year. So if it's already priced in, then it's priced in. And I expect we will see inflation starting to come down. Rents, which are a big component, that's the housing component, are with a lag. Energy prices are down. So I think that the long end is very well anchored. And I point out that the U.S. bond market has been the best performing bond market in the G7. That in the spring, all we heard was that the U.S. Treasury market isn't a risk-free asset anymore, and nothing could be further from the truth. We're the best performing bond market in the world.
I want to talk about TikTok, but I also the market's at new highs again, Mr. Secretary, and I made the point again. Most of those stock markets, maybe not the Dow, but the S&P and the Nasdaq indicated higher today. With everything we've heard about and worried about in terms of global trade rebalancing and tariffs and the labor market and everything else, do you think does it deserve to be there? Is it because of the anticipation of some rate cuts, or is it something more positive like deregulation or something else?
Joe, I think it's a combination. I've been in the market 35, 40 years. It's very difficult to tease out one factor. We all know that market climbs a wall of worry, but I think the market, the U.S. market, is seeing a lot of things it likes with President Trump's agenda. And first and foremost, it's back to his first term, non-inflationary growth. We are going to see substantial deregulation. I can tell you, everyone asks me, what's the biggest surprise for you now that you've gotten into the Treasury seat? And it was just this regulatory morass that we had surrounded American businesses with, and President Trump is determined to cut through that. In his first term, he said that there was going to one regulation could go in for every 3 that came out. It ended up being 1 went in for every 7. He set the target of 1 for every 10 now. I think it'll be substantially more. We're seeing, over at EPA, Lee Zeldin's doing a great job in terms of letting America get back to building things again. We had become a kind of country where we weren't able to build things in a robust fashion. It was delayed. We couldn't build things across state lines. So we want to be an AI superpower. We want to be energy dominant, and all that's got to come from deregulation. And I think the market likes that. I think the markets are also looking through and seeing that the president's tariffs, contrary to what everyone said in April, we're now getting research reports from major Wall Street banks. Barclays had a very good report about 10 days ago that said that the U.S. bond market is performing very well because of the revenue from tariffs. Tariffs were supposed to destroy the U.S. bond market, and instead we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars this year to pay down the debt.
How do you think that plays out, Mr. Secretary? Have you had conversations about what to do if the Supreme Court upholds some of those decisions about the tariffs? Are there other avenues that are you involved in trying to figure out what the next step would be?
Joe, I'm confident that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of the administration. I think the law is on our side. I think historically that the Supreme Court is very reluctant to overrule a president's signature policy, and President Trump's two signature policies. The first is the border, where he has closed the border. They said it couldn't be done, and the Supreme Court has gone along with all the immigration rulings, despite what the lower courts have done. And I think we're seeing here the lower courts are trying to stop this, and I'm confident we'll see it in the Supreme Court. And there are lots of other authorities we can use, but I am confident that we will prevail with the IEEPA lawsuit.
Mr. Secretary, yesterday you said that Chinese negotiators in the talks that you were having with them came up with a very aggressive ask. There was reporting around it that suggested that was related to technology issues and broader trade issues, and tying those two together. You said at the time that the U.S. was not willing to sacrifice national security for the sake of reaching a deal. And then later we heard that there is a framework. You came out and said there's a framework for a deal for TikTok. Can you explain what the aggressive ask was and how you kind of worked through that to get to the framework for TikTok, and then what the framework for TikTok is?
Well, Becky, under President Trump's leadership, the United States of America is back. If you recall, when Secretary Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with the Chinese for the first time in Alaska, they were berated and scolded for about 2 hours and had to sit and take it. The talks with our Chinese counterparts, because of the good relationship between President Trump, Party Chair Xi, are done with great respect and very fulsome. The Chinese came in, as they typically do, with a long list of asks dating back all the way to President Trump's administration, a lot of grievances with what the Biden administration had done. And I will tell you what turned the tide was a call that Ambassador Greer and I had with President Trump the night after the first day of negotiations. And President Trump made it clear that he would have been willing to let TikTok go dark, that we were not going to give up national security in favor of the deal. So we were able to reach a series of agreements, mostly for things we will not be doing in the future that have no effect on our national security. And I anticipate we have a framework for a deal, and I anticipate on Friday, when President Trump has a phone call with Party Chair Xi, that the two of them will agree on a final deal.
There are so many questions surrounding TikTok, and even this last week, the Utah governor, in the wake of the assassination, talked a lot about how there are Russian and Chinese bots that are set loose on social media. He didn't name TikTok in particular, but just said that these are ways of other countries trying to foment hate here in this country. And do you feel like there's an agreement here that will allow you to make sure that those foreign countries, other agents, are not able to do that when it comes to TikTok?
So, Becky, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, this terrible murder, my friend Charlie Kirk, that's a combination of the hate and the terrible language that we've seen from the left, and this fomenting of hatred, violence, normalizing violence. But that's across many social media platforms. If we want to isolate TikTok, a couple of things. First of all, there are two agreements that had to be done. One are the commercial terms of the agreement between the current owner of TikTok, ByteDance, and the new investors. That had, in essence, been done since March or April. A few details left to be ironed out. After Liberation Day, the Chinese put that on hold. President Trump, Party Chair Xi, wanted to re-engage on the subject, and the subject of our talks was the Chinese government okaying the deal. So I think that's where we are now, and I can tell you that this deal wouldn't be done without proper safeguards for U.S. national security and the interest of all our citizens, especially our children.
Something changed, Mr. Secretary, about that. They weren't going to allow, it was on the export control list that I guess, I don't understand this stuff, a recommendation algorithm in TikTok that they were never going to part with. And is that, I get you don't want to go over the exact details of what was agreed to, but that was a change in what had been one of the real stumbling blocks to getting a deal, right? Are they going to part with that at this point?
Joe, I would say President Trump showed great leadership and fortitude in what he wanted to see on this deal. And I'm not going to reveal the commercial terms between the new investors and ByteDance. That will be shown in the coming days or weeks. But I think it is highly satisfactory for the U.S. interest, and it seems as though we were also able to meet the Chinese interest.
Because people are saying that he got cover, President Xi, with the monopoly complaint about NVIDIA and Mellanox, and I guess they signed off on that merger with the idea that they would be supplied as many chips as they wanted, and now they're not getting it. So, but people say, oh, he's looking tough to everyone in China by saying that, which allows them to part with that recommendation algorithm. Look, Joe,
I have enough trouble keeping up with what's going on in U.S. politics, so I'm not sure what's in the mind of the Chinese public.
Can I ask, did the NVIDIA investigation that China announced yesterday come up in those talks? This idea that they are looking into monopolistic behavior of NVIDIA. We don't know exactly what that investigation completely entails, but the read on it has been that, NVIDIA is in trouble for following U.S. law and not supplying chips at the behest of the U.S. government to China. Did that come up in your talks?
Well, the NVIDIA headline came across the tape late morning London time, and we of course expressed our disappointment to our Chinese counterparts, but it had nothing to do with the ongoing talks or the outcome of the talks.
Did they take your displeasure that you had expressed and say they would do anything with it, or explain to you what this investigation entails?
I'm not sure that they were informed that it was going to be released during the talks. So as Joe said earlier, maybe it was for domestic Chinese consumption.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, you get a whiff of inflation, and obviously you're going to see it in the way that the headlines are covered. But in anyone's world, you probably have to say that inflation has been surprisingly muted in the face of what we heard was going to happen from the tariffs. I know you probably know Gary Cohn, vice chairman at IBM. He was in the Trump administration in the first term. He had an interesting thought about how companies are maintaining margins in the face of tariffs. He said that they're becoming more productive in terms of employment. That's one of the reasons that the labor market may be weaker than people previously thought. So they can maintain margins, not pass it along necessarily to consumers, but by hiring fewer people or getting, I don't know, tightening their belts in terms of employment. How do you explain that inflation has been relatively muted?
Well, Joe, I think it's a combination. I think that many of the exporters are eating the tariffs in terms of they're lowering prices by as much or more than the tariffs. We've seen the Japanese auto companies say that they're going to eat the tariffs. One of the Chinese online companies, I can't remember whether it was Temu or Shein, lowered their prices by 60%. And I think the U.S. companies are working smarter. I think that the example that Gary Cohn may have given could be very specific to IBM, where he's the vice chair, because I think we are seeing the tip of the spear for the AI revolution. The real productivity increases are coming in the programming field, in the tech firms. Thus far, we haven't seen firms shedding labor. We've seen less demand for labor, but thus far, the job market is in balance.
You think that this portends a thawing, the China news on TikTok? Will it extrapolate to an overall trade deal, do you think? Because the word has been that they're tough and that they're not in a position to give the president what he wants, and this is going to drag on for a while. Is there light at the end of the tunnel, you think?
Oh, well, Joe, this was the fourth meeting that we had. Originally, I was assigned the task of negotiating the TikTok deal. My counterpart, the Chinese Vice Premier Ho Feng, who's also their trade negotiator, was assigned this. And it turned into a larger discussion on trade. This was our fourth meeting. We've met in Geneva, London, Stockholm, now Madrid. So we're touring the European capitals. We need to meet again before November 10th. That is the date that our role expires on the reciprocal. The full reciprocal tariffs on China, so we'll be seeing each other again. It's November, it must be Frankfurt, and but each one of those talks has become more and more productive. I think the Chinese now sense that a trade deal is possible. As the tariff wall has gone up around the U.S., what I am hearing from our Western allies and Asian partners around the world, the more developed countries, is that the Chinese goods are flooding their countries, and they don't know what to do about it. They're slightly apoplectic that these goods are coming in. The Chinese told us at our talks that trade with China, Chinese exports to the U.S. are down about 14%. They're up about 6.9% to Europe, and Ambassador Jameson Greer, who's been an incredible partner with me in all four of these talks, believes that the U.S. deficit with China will narrow by at least 30% this year and probably more in 2026. So the idea here is to come into balance, to have fair trade.
I would ask you about India, but I know we're running out of time. And when I've been around you and I've had my picture taken with you, and I don't like it because you're like about a whole head taller than me. So if I was going to mess with someone, it wouldn't be you. But with this whole Pulte incident that we read about, Mr. Secretary, any I wouldn't mess with you. I don't think he would want to really either. But anything to that? What happened? Can you confirm or deny some of those reports? And I don't want you to get mad at me for asking this because I'm scared of you too.
Joe, couple of things. Treasury secretaries dating back to Alexander Hamilton have a history of dueling, and I think with the president's team, it turned out a little better for Treasury side this time, and with President Trump's team, just like the great sports team, you can argue in the locker room, but we get out in the field and do the best for the president and the American people every day.
It's kind of like Squawk Box.
Yeah, exactly. I'm more scared of Scott.
Than me?
I hope Andrew's not out because I hope Andrew's not out because one of you gave him a black eye.
No.
I'll be out the next 3 days.
My money in a three-way fight there's on Becky always.
I know. That's fine. I know. People have imitated me and Andrew going something like that's not good. Secretary, thanks for all your time.
You are my favorite person to talk to,
I know.
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah.
You'll take any and all questions, and we really appreciate it.
We do.
Good. Well, thanks. Good to be with you. I'm here for the president's state visit to the UK. He is the only leader ever to be given 2 state visits. It's going to be a fantastic day tomorrow with King Charles. His Majesty is hosting the president and guest at Windsor tomorrow night. So it's going to be an incredible few days.
I remember when that offer came, and he was very, I think, honored by that. Mr. Secretary, we'll get to India, and so much to talk about whenever you do come on, but we appreciate all your time this morning, as I said. Thanks.